I'm John Hostettler, a candidate for the United States Senate, and I approve this message.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming out this evening and spending time with us. I usually go through a pretty long spiel beforehand to introduce myself to the people in Kokomo and Peru and Crown Point and Columbia City and the other places I've been to, so I will forego that. Many of you know me. I am John Hostettler. I'm running for the United States Senate. Many people have asked me why I came to this conclusion, why I have come to this point, and I'll just give you a brief synopsis of the events that transpired in order for this to come about. Late last year, around the middle of October, there was a published report that our current Senator, Evan Bayh, had announced that he would join Republicans to filibuster the Senate health care plan that at that time included a public health option. Well, I've been a student of the good senator's record ever since he came to the United States Senate. And this was a pattern that was well known to me in that about every 6 years, or I guess I should say maybe every 6 years, the senator believed that he needed to vote differently than he'd voted in the previous 5 years because he realized he was going to have to come back to Indiana and get elected. And so on a various assortment of issues such as taxes and gun votes and votes on life and a whole host of other issues that have their conservative and liberal philosophies represented in the way an individual votes in Congress, he believed that, like I said, every 6 years he would begin to vote a way that was markedly different, representing a philosophy markedly different than the philosophy that characterized his first 5 years. So I just assumed that this was that we were going to be watching this again. And in fact, I blogged to this extent near the end of October. And reminded people of that Charles Schulz classic. You may be familiar with it, that comes about every October 31st, where Linus says, it's the great pumpkin, Charlie Brown. If you remember that, every October 31st, the great pumpkin rises out of the pumpkin patch, and Linus is there to hopefully witness that. Well, every 6 years, Hoosiers got to witness a conservative Evan Bayh, like a rising out of the pumpkin patch, something very different than had been the case for 5 years prior. And I was believing that was the case because as I went through, I went through the votes, and whether it was after he was first elected in 1998 or his second election in 2004, the votes continued to get more and more conservative the closer that Senator Bayh got to the next election. I thought that was the case. I thought that's what was going on. But then a friend from Clay County sent me an email with a YouTube video attached to it. And he simply asked one question: are Hoosiers really okay with this? So I clicked on the YouTube video, and it was an interview from Rick Sanchez of CNN interviewing Dan Carpenter, an editor with the Indianapolis Star. And he began to interview Mr. Carpenter, and they began to talk about Senator Bayh's wife and her position on a board of directors with WellPoint, the largest subsidiary of Blue Cross Blue Shield. As a board member at WellPoint, Mrs. Bayh was paid well over $320,000 a year for a subsidiary of the largest subsidiary of one of the largest private health insurance industry companies in the country. And so I began to wonder, well, wait a minute, this might not be a desire to get reelected, even though that ideological nexus was there, even though ideologically he should have joined with Republicans to filibuster that public health option. And the editor, Mr. Carpenter, went on to even characterize Mrs. By's position on the board of directors as a, quote, investment, end quote. Well, I began to wonder now the true motivation of the good senator in deciding to join Republicans to filibuster this public health option. Because prior to his announcement, the private health insurance industry had issued a report of a study that was done. And that study found that if a public health option was made a part of health care reform legislation that became law, it would basically mean the demise of the private health insurance industry. And so we have, during the interview, Mr. Sanchez of CNN quoted a report, not a report, but a statement given by Senator By. And he went through a long litany of issues where he had joined Democrats to expand public access, through the government, access to health care, and that he had that record, and he had a record that did show support of the other side, which in my opinion did not bolster his case. It in fact made it worse. If that was your philosophy in the past, to expand public health options for U.S. citizens, then why were you filibustering this greatest expansion of public health options in this federal package? So the question was, are Hoosiers really okay with this? Are Hoosiers really okay with votes in the Senate being given and being taken in order, not necessarily much for philosophical reasons, not so much for consistency reasons, but more for reasons that aggrandize the household income of a member of the United States Senate? And so the question was, are Hoosiers okay with this? I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with members of Congress using their position to enhance their own personal or family or household income. And that is why even though I can fundamentally agree with the strategy that he was utilizing in this very unique situation, according to his own admitted pattern of voting, even though I could agree with the philosophy behind it, I couldn't agree with the motivations behind it. I want to make sure that when my representative, whether it's in the United States Senate or the United States House of Representatives, votes, they vote my wishes. They vote to especially uphold the Constitution of the United States. That oath to which they hold, which is effectively their job description and their only job description. And so a few weeks later, I announced that I would be running for the United States Senate.